So Sri Krishna started talking only when Arjun reached a certain point in his studentship. So all learning begins from 2 points. First, that I don't know. The moment you say I already know, your learning has stopped there. So it's extremely important to be in a state of, okay, I don't know, and so I must learn. The second obstacle that will come up in our learning is very strongly held views or convictions. So there should be a place for strong convictions, but loosely held. When they are loosely held, they allow for other points of view to be considered. And if they feel true, then you allow yourself to change those views. Very, very important to have these two things in place. With that studentship, he's asking him, you tell me what will lead to my ultimate welfare. So now we will start. It's a very good time for Venkatesh and Kamal to join us, because in the next shlok, Sri Bhagwanji is going to actually summarize chapter 2 before he starts to answer other questions. Okay. So let's start reading chapter 3. Vijay, birthday boy, will you please read with us?
Sure, ma'am.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha
Sri Bhagavan Uvacha
Loke asmin dvividha nishtha
Lokyasmi vid divanishta
Loke asmin
Lokyasmin
dvividha
vida
nishtha
nishta nishta
Pura prokta maya nakha
Pura prokta mayanaka
Jnana yogena sankhyanam
Jnana yogena sankhyanam
Karma yogena yoginam.
Karma yogena yoginam.
So we'll do the word meanings. Loke is lok mein, in this world. Dvividha, two types of nishtha, discipline. Pura, pehle, long time ago. Prokta, have been said. Maya, by me. Anag, mayanagha is may plus anag. May is by me. Anag is o nishpa. So this is Krishna referring to Arjun by saying that you are the one who does not commit any sin. Now, who does not commit a sin? These are very important ways. Every time he refers to Arjun in a certain way, there is a deeper meaning to it. So, who does not commit sin? We all commit sins, right? At an action level, we all commit sins sometimes without knowing or knowing, right? It's a natural way. But someone who does not commit sin is a person who is not attached to what he's doing, a person for whom there is no doership, a person who is acting on behalf or from Bhagwanji's strength. He can commit no error. He cannot commit anything wrong. Okay? And that is what is being referred to here. You will see this a lot more as we go forward. Jnana Yogen Sankhyanam. So the knowledge, the connection through knowledge, which is called the Sankhya Yoga, which is what we learned in last class. And Karma Yogen, the connection through the word, through action, Yoginam. Those yogis are called as Karma Yogis. Okay. So let's read.
The Lord says, in this world there are two mutually exclusive paths leading to Nishtha, culmination of discipline. One is the path of knowledge for the Sankhyas or men of direct perception, and the other is path of action for the yogis or men of action. Nishthi.
So this is what we've talked about a few times, is we all are at the bottom of a mountain and we're at different stages of the mountain. Our eventual goal and purpose is to reach the top of the mountain. And for us, that means reaching moksha. Moksha in Simpler terms is reaching a state of blissful happiness. And that happiness is regardless of our circumstance, right? And so there are two ways to climb up a mountain, right? There is one, a steeper path, which is more arduous, more strenuous, takes away more from you. It's also far riskier because once you fall right to the bottom. And the second is a scenic journey, which is you go round and round the mountain, up the road slowly, at your own pace. But every step you take, you know you are reaching closer to the goal, right? And this is what this shloka says, is if you want to go to the top of the mountain, there are two paths. And now he will enumerate the two paths for us. The steep one being Sankhya Yogi and the scenic one being Karma Yogi. But he said it's very clear that the goal and purpose for us being humans is the same, which is to strive and be the natural state we are born in, which is of happiness. Yeah. And that's in this shloka also called as self-realization or God-realization. We've talked about this in the previous classes as well.
And I think another important word here is the word nishtha. Nishtha refers to discipline. So what is important is that whichever path we choose, we stick to it with a discipline. Without discipline, there is nothing that can be achieved. It's a complete waste of time. Okay, so very, very important. So that's why he's used the word nishtha. It is not a path. It is a path of discipline. It is not like even whether you call it a scenic path or whether you call it an arduous path. Important thing is that we stick to it with discipline. And for us, what is our discipline? Our discipline is first attending the class where we do Shravan, where we listen. Then we have to do Swadhyay. Swadhyay is extremely important every day. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, reading 2 shlokas a day and doing manan on it, contemplation on that on a daily basis. What does this mean in my life today?
And there's a huge difference when you actually listen in class and when you read it on your own. When you listen in class, you tend to be sometimes active, sometimes passive. So you like what you're listening. It kind of makes sense. It's logical. So you're like, yeah, I understand it. But when you read on your own, you're forced to find meaning to how it makes sense to you. And that's why Swadhyay becomes really important, because each one is at a different stage at a mountain, and which shloka appeals to who in your current circumstance will be different. But reading it will allow you to internalize that. When reading it alone and understanding it will allow you to internalize it that much more. And that's why Swadhyay is something we talk about a lot.
And also without reading and without applying, right? Like we always say, this is not a pravachan class, right? It is not a class where you will come just to feel good. 1 hour, I feel good about it, and so we move away. If we approach it that way, then it's a complete waste of everyone's time, right? Please don't attend the class if you're coming in for pravachan, because it is not that. It is a very practical class. We have to go back. We have to do our swadhyay. We have to think about what it means in my life. If we are not doing that manan, the contemplation, to take these lessons and try and apply them, it will never come. So discipline is very, very important, and he's starting the entire postulation of Karma Yoga by insisting this is a discipline. One step a day, very, very important. So we have to do Swadhyay. We have to do Shlok Smaran, like learning the shlokas as we go ahead. Very important. 1 shloka a week as we go through this chapter. We will be assigning. Last time we had given first shloka. We had a few of you come back and actually send us the recordings. It's really, really nice to see that. And I will insist that everyone spends that little time to remember those shlokas. And why is that important? Because it's like indexing. When you are actually faced with something in your life, you will not have time to open Gita book and ask yourself which particular principle applies here. Right? When you are actually doing your math calculations, you will not go to your calculator to check what is, 3 cross 2. You just know it, right? And that is what makes your life easy. This is like that. There are 3 chapters that we will memorize in Shlok, in Gita, and chapter 3 is the first and very important one. So we have to take that, we have to have the discipline of learning the shlokas. And the last one is Namjap. So we finished Namjap Anushtan in April, but that shouldn't stop you from continuing your own sadhana. And as always, Namjap is not a, it's just another tool as a reminder. So you need to ask yourself, what are your reminders? Whatever are your reminders to remind you what are our what we need to apply in our lives on a daily basis. Okay, so this is another of those things. So discipline, extremely important, and with that discipline will come a point where we start actually not just contemplating, but that contemplation will force us to change our actions, and that becomes nidhi dhyasan. We start implementing the learnings in our lives, our actions, our thoughts, our words will change. And that will change our entire experience of life. And as we keep doing it, then comes the last part where we will reach God realization, which is Kirtan. Kirtan, we always think of Kirtan as, sitting somewhere and learning, doing bhajans. But that is not what Gita's way is. Gita's way, as we have learned, as what Krishna has been telling us, Kirtan equates to applying these learnings on a daily basis in an effortless manner. So, in the initial stages, you're contemplating, then you're trying to figure out how to do it, but you're thinking, this is a situation, how do I act? This is a better way to act. And at some stage, it will become natural and effortless. So, we go from doing to being. Okay, so we have to get there, and that will never come without doing in the first place. So, we've insisted on these 4 things every time, and it's something that we will keep insisting because it is the only way to actually have Gita in our lives in a practical way.
Quite a few of people who join this Gita journey, they always come in when I have the conversation with them to do the initiation. They always say, there are always 2 versions to the story. One is, rather 3 versions. One is you want to be a better version of yourself. Second is they're going through a very difficult time in their lives and they don't want to do meaning making. So they turn to the scriptures to find meaning and purpose. And the third are the people who are like, I'm going through life. I'm now 35, 40 years old. I want to know what the purpose of life is, right? I'm asking all these philosophical questions and I want to know the purpose of life. And one of the reasons we read chapter 3 is because between shloka 1 and the entire chapter, it talks about not only the purpose of life, which is the goal of self-realization. It will talk to you right now about the 2 paths that you can choose. And then it will also, the rest of the chapter is devoted to the bhav, the discipline and the bhav with which you carry out that purpose. And we've always talked about purpose, bhav, action, object, those as a hierarchy. This is that chapter that details it. And the beauty of that is that it's actually asking you as an individual to, in your life, define your purpose. What is your overarching purpose of this life, of this body, of this opportunity that we've been given? And that goal shouldn't be a transient goal for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. What is the real purpose of your life? And then draw it back to, okay, what are the ways to get there? So Bhagavanji said there are 2 ways, Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yogi. And now we'll talk a lot about the bhav and the discipline with which we need to carry it out. Mistakes will happen. There's no perfection that Bhagavanji is seeking. He's made that very clear in chapter 2. He only wants to see commitment and the disciplined commitment to move forward. And that is what Nishtha is. Right? Okay. Yeah, I think continue reading, Vijay.
I just wanted to add one point. So last couple of weeks, you know what is happening in India with number of increasing cases and so on. So the overall, what I feel that like what has happened with me also is the change that I'm going through currently. So I don't know how many number of people I would have helped in the over the period of time. I was keep on getting calls and so on for support or direction, basically, like how to go. I mean, the knowledge is also lacking a lot, right? Like what to do next, the basic aspects once people are infected, that kind of a thing. But with this courses, thanks to all of you who's walking and getting the path together, was able to see with the number of calls, with the number of increasing cases, naturally you will feel kind of like depressed or something, right? Typically, if you get like uh, some 20, 25 calls per day regarding only regarding COVID, you are not even a doctor. You are not that way, but at least you will be able to, you are able to get through, and people are looking up to you for life-saving kind of a situation, right? Like where they want some guidance, like what to happen next. I mean, all the doctors are overloaded as well. So at least the information that you honestly know, you are able to deliver and guide, and it is more for most of them. It is really working well. That is the reason people are reaching out also. Um, I mean, the earlier version of me probably last year would have handled the situation differently, but this time, good and bad, right? Like I'm able to take it, I'm able to guide as well. Um, and One side, I'm feeling also sad that there's so many people are looking for information, or so many people are suffering. That is the other aspect.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure the lesson is definitely making a difference, and this is helping me handle situations differently. Because I would have said, I'm not a doctor, go meet some doctor or something like that, or differently, right? Like now I'm able to, and it is not like I'm telling out of my own awareness. My sister is a cousin sister is a doctor, and so on. So we were able to um, do things differently with the proper awareness. So that is what is happening.
Okay. So yeah, thank you for sharing. And I know it's been Rishabh, can you stop your screen sharing? I think you're sharing your screen by mistake. Oh, there you go. Thank you for sharing. And I know it's been a tremendously hard time for a lot of people, but I take a lot of inspiration with what you're sharing, right? Like the fact that you're implementing the principles slowly but surely, and you're able to be in a state of calm. I will also tell you this, more and your calls will increase from 25 to 50 because you actually become a medium for doing Bhagwanji's work. And people will start calling you more because people will say, ha, Vijay ko call karo, he will always be there, he will always be helpful. God always gives the most amount of work to the person who is doing his work. Like, you remember, I give the example of the shadi, you're going for an Indian wedding. There are lots of people who work, right? But there's always that one chotu in an Indian wedding who just works a lot. And whenever you want to get some critical thing done, who do you give it to? Chotu. Because he's overworked, but you know he's doing it with the right bhav, he'll get it done, he's just in that state of mind. And yeah, so it's incredible that you're able to change your perception on things, not get affected to a large degree, and the universe is responding because they're reaching out to you as a medium of help through him, and that's fantastic. And of course, there are going to be mistakes we'll make. There are going to be days we'll feel sad, and that's why we come to these Sunday classes. That's why we do our daily reading, and that's how we build our awareness. That this is my current breaking point. This is what really affects me. Why does it really affect me? How do I rise above it, etc.
Yeah. And with every moment, it's like exercise, right? we start small. We don't run a full marathon on day one, but as we keep doing that 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, slowly our body's capacity to exercise keeps increasing. Similarly, as we practice these principles, our mental and emotional and spiritual strength keeps increasing. And hence, our ability to make a difference around us, to ourselves, and to our communities increases as well. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sorry. I have one question as well. So suppose, you are practicing the discipline of doing the right thing as per your understanding. And then there are days when, you don't feel like doing it because of, certain situation, like you're following some specific discipline, and then you just kind of give it a break, like for some XYZ reason. Is that like a thing which is okay, and then you get back to your normal discipline life, or is it like you have to kind of get over that attitude of giving into the circumstances, or like simple thing for somebody like who is exercising or dieting, and then they would take a break off for some time and then go back again. So how does that kind of that sort of a behavior justify the that following a discipline?
So Gita is a way of life, and you will get to a point where like we said, right, with practice, we go from Nididhyasana to Kirtan. That Kirtan has no break. It is who you are. It is who you become. That is the end goal. Of course, we are starting from where we are, that we will have setbacks. And that's fine. That's fine. It is fine to the extent that you shouldn't berate yourself for it. You shouldn't feel guilty about it. Allow no negative emotions to come in. Just recognize it for what it is. And that tells you where you are in your journey. That's it. And when you are ready to come back again, start with renewed vigor. So there is, like we read, right? There is no space for likes or dislikes in Karma. That's exactly what we are trying to go above. Mind is always chasing likes and dislikes. I feel like doing this, so I'll do it today. I don't feel like doing this, so I will not do it today. That is the job of mind to do. It's a mind that will keep on doing this. And when intellect starts to drive your mind, what does that do? It will tell you what is the right thing to do. And hence you have to do it. It's like once you become a parent, you are a parent all the time. You can't say, I can take a break from being a mom.
Yeah.
Take a break from being a wife. No, it doesn't happen. You can categorize it that way for yourself by saying, okay, I am going out for my own me time, for a coffee with my friends. That you can do that, but that doesn't mean that you've stopped being a mom for that time. Once a mom, always a mom, right?
Okay.
So it's a way of being. And so you have to continue on that path of discipline. But if there are breaks along the way, if there are setbacks along the way, that's fine.
It's also the awareness of knowing whether you are doing things with the right purpose, right? So you can be goal driven but not desire driven. So when you're and the difference is a goal, the purpose of what you're doing should constantly energize you. And if you constantly feel like you're doing dieting, but every 4 days you need a cheat break or you need a cheat meal and you come back, then you're doing it for sugar highs, the desires. The desire could be to look good, to reach a certain weight because I will fit into a dress, or for me, my jeans, all of those things. But move it to purpose level, then all of a sudden doing that activity on a daily basis with discipline alone should energize.
And so you will actually
breaks
go on
will happen.
doing it. Yeah.
Circumstances will come, breaks will happen. But that activity becomes so important because it's aligned with your purpose that not doing it for 2 days, you'll feel like, oh, I have to do it.
Yeah, but again, not in a negative way. You don't like, oh, because somebody's fallen sick, a child has fallen sick. Now that child needs your full attention. And so you're not able to take out time for Swadhyaya for those 2 days. If that starts to make you upset, oh, why is he, why has he fallen sick? Why do I have all of this work? I'm not able to do it. Then also that shows you something else, that you developed a rag for that particular activity. So that has again defeated the purpose, but that's okay. That you will start, once you start getting deeper into it, when you start applying it, you will realize how powerful and how amazing the mind is.
Yeah.
How many ways it can very easily, like even in a very sattvic looking activity, it can bind you. And the idea is to move beyond that bondage, right? So
All right, let's read Vijay.
Nishtha, conviction in culmination of discipline. In this sloka, the Lord introduces an important concept, Nishtha. By constant practice of particular discipline, a level of perfection is acquired in that discipline, as constant and arduous practice is basis of discipline. Before directly replying to Arjuna's question, Lord considered it necessary to explain various alternatives available to a man so far as the state of perfection is concerned. On this important point depends the best use of human life. Only two principal alternatives are open to a person who intends to utilize his life for self realization, which is the same thing as God realization. Of these two, one discipline of Sankhya and the other is a discipline of yoga. The former discipline is based on direct perception or knowledge of the self, and the later is based on realization through a clear perception of signs of action. Karma yoga or simply yoga. This means that Nishchita is relevant for only those who are desirous of achieving a state of self perfection. Such a person is called yogi.
yeah. So again, we are all yogis here, right? As soon as you have that desire to learn the truth and to have that self-realization, we become a yogi. And in Gita, whenever you read the word yog or yogi without any other change, without any other word before that, that means we are talking of karma yoga and we are talking of karma yogi. So now we will talk about Sankhya Nishtha, the path of direct perception, as Abhinav mentioned, the direct path up, right? We've read that. Why is it called Sankhya Nishtha? Sankhya comes from Sankhya, maths, right? Digits, 0 and 1. So there are no shades of gray that are allowed in this discipline. It's only 0 or 1. So either you are there or you're not there. Either you understand it or you don't understand it. And either you practice or you don't practice it. It can't be that I practice Sankhya Yoga for an hour and the next hour I'm not practicing it. There is no such shades of gray. It's only 0 or 1. And what is that 0 or 1? It says that there is only one reality and everything else is mithya, everything else is unreal. And the only reality is that which is the ultimate truth, that which is not transient, that which is immutable, that which is ajar amar. It has never been born, ever unborn, can never die, can never change, is always immutable, right? Only that is the truth, which means that anything that changes, anything that is born, anything that dies, anything that has any kind of transition in it, the size increases, decreases, any of those changes, that means it is unreal. So in Sankhya Yoga, our bodies are unreal. Our entire life is unreal. This entire material world is unreal because there's always a starting point. Anything that has a starting point will always have an end point. Okay, and so there is only one reality, and that reality is the capital S self that resides in all of us. And a Sankhya yogi sees that every jivatma, every individualized self is part of a larger whole. And so a Sankhya yogi will look at everyone like God. He makes no distinction between me and you. I am not me. I am part of him. You are not you. You are part of him. So then why am I doing something? I'm eating food. I'm cooking food. When he does these activities, a Sankhya yogi never thinks that he's doing any of those activities. This body is there. It is just a tool for him to do what needs to be done. And whatever this body feels, whatever the emotions are there, whatever happens, it is all because of interactions of the three gunas, which are the creator. Like we've touched upon gunas very transiently in the last chapter, right? There are three gunas that form the basis of Prakriti, and everything is created through interactions and modifications of these three gunas. If you take these three gunas away, the entire Prakriti dissolves. We will read, there's a full chapter later on that is dedicated to only understanding these gunas. Okay. So Sankhya Yogi says that whatever is happening because of that interaction of gunas. I am not involved in it at all. It's a very difficult thing for us to relate to. It's very difficult to deny our bodies. It's very difficult to deny that the label that has been put on top of all of us, right, as in the form of ego. It is very difficult to deny these things. It's very difficult to deny the reality of the world around us. And that is why Sankhya Yogi is not our path. We are men and women of action. Our job is to follow Gita's path through the Karma Yoga. Make no mistake about that. Any one out of us, any one of us were in, for us, if the path was that of a Sankhya Yogi, our circumstances will be different, our mind makeup will be different, our actions will be different, everything around us will be extremely different. So anyone who is thinking, or if you ever get to that point that maybe I don't want to do Karma Yoga, maybe Sankhya Yogi is the better way to do, I want to leave this world and I want to go and do something else, then know that really is escapism, which means that there is something going on in your life that you don't want to deal with, and so you want to escape it. It is very difficult. We try even for 10 minutes to stay in the state of a Sankhya Yogi, and you will realize how tough it is. It is impossible for us. So it is very important. We cannot give up our sense of who we are and our sense of, we cannot deny that reality. There are very few people in this world, very rare, who come in as they are already realized people. Anyone who's already a Sankhya Yogi is fully realized because he is one with God. He is God himself. He is his messenger who's come in here. A Sankhya Yogi is already there because he's only seeing the truth. He's only seeing the reality.
Just to add there, suppose the difference between Sankhya Yogi and the Karma Yogi. So isn't it possible for a Karma Yogi who is doing their regular action with a sense of detachment, they experience being Sankhya Yogi because they are looking at everything from as a third person and without any sense of attachment, and then they are doing the action as well. So what is the difference between these two state of being?
So we'll cover that through the entire chapter, and it's a very subtle difference, right? The action and the bhav is more or less the same, which is in a karma yoga, you have your duty, you're bound by karma, and you cannot escape your duty, but you're acutely aware of it because you've taken on responsibility, you've taken on the way where you're born, you have to act as a doer to do the duty. But what you do as a karma yogi is you give up the conceit of doership.
So a Sankhya
So
Yogi,
you are like, yes, I have this responsibility,
yeah,
I will do it, but I'm doing it through God's will, through God's power, and whatever the consequence of that action, that also is not, that whatever comes is a blessing. Whether it's favorable to me or unfavorable to me, I accept it as a blessing, I take that as my prarabdha, and then continue doing my duty after that. A Sankhya Yogi, on the other hand, will be fully detached to saying, I am not this body. So I don't really have a duty I have a purpose with the capital S self. So I will be the doer of the
No, I
capital.
will not. So a Sankhya yogi gives up the sense of being a doer. I'm not doing anything. This body is doing something driven by the gunas. I'm not doing anything. Okay. So there is no concept of a doer. He is the one who is doing it, and the one who is being done to is also him. The results are also him. There is no change.
Basically, what I understand that as a Sankhya yogi, you are not part of the situation at all. And as a Karma yogi, you are part of the situation, but you don't take, you are not attached to the result. You just do the action because you have to give your best in terms of after getting the universal energy and the guidance from the divine, and then you do your action basically.
Exactly. So you are the doer. You will still know that I am doing something, but not have the conceit of doership. Because I am doing it, but I am not doing it because I am super smart.
Yeah.
I am doing it with the energy given by him. So there is that big difference between Sankhya Yogi, who has no concept of doership at all. Like he's like, I'm not a doer, he's doing it. And in Karma Yogi, you say I am the doer, but there is no conceit of doership. That's the subtle difference. And they both ultimately lead us to the same goal. So the same goal of being detached, the same goal of not being bound by the consequences of the actions, the same goal of self-realization.
So the end result, basically the purpose of a Karma yogi is to be like a Sankhya yogi, but still do the action.
The purpose is self-realization for both
Yes.
of them, not to be like each other.
So let me give a example that might make it easier. Imagine you're watching a play, a theater. Okay, Karma yogis are the people who are acting on stage. They have a role, they have a responsibility. They jump into the role, they do their act, they get out, they do another act, they play another role, and they keep moving on. Right? So that's the Karma yogi. The Sankhya yogi is the person in the balcony who is just quietly observing the play. If there is a role for him to play, he believes the gunas will force him off his seat to like get involved in the action or the play or the clapping or the boos or whatever else that goes around in the theater, and he will constantly otherwise be in a meditative state of being in the balcony. But the Karma yogis who are on stage, they will be fully acting, they'll be playing it, they will be playing the role. The problem we have is while playing the part, we believe that play is real.
And we believe that
So
we
we
are
get-
that part. We are the role that we are playing, we become that role.
We become that role. So our job is not to become Sankhya yogis as the audience, because we've been born with a certain prarabdha of participating in this game. Our job is through this connection of the theater, of acting, can we reach a state of self-realization? And the way we do it is by playing the role with the best possible way we can, knowing that this is our prarabdha, this is our, what's the English word for prarabdha?
Prarabdha is consequence of
Destiny?
actions. Sorry?
No, it is a destiny, right?
No, prarabdha is
That-
not
Consequences. It's the
Consequences.
consequences of that.
Consequence.
consequences of the action, right? So you are playing the play, there are certain consequences that will come by you playing the role. The trick is you don't become that actor to then become attached to one consequence and detached to another consequence. You accept it all and you continue playing it, and that's a great, easier way to connect with the Lord.
Yeah, but
Acknowledge.
eventually the whole idea is that even when you start doing those actions, there are no consequences that will get created for you in future. That's how you will make a karma and a karma. We'll talk about that. The consequences will not bind you any longer as we go forward. And that is and we learn how we are going to do that.
And this is true, right? Because all of us have played so many different roles in our lives already, in the multiple lives we've had. We just don't remember them. Each role we take on, each act we take on, we just get very attached to it. We get so attached about our looks, about our body, about our family. We get so protective about things around us, about our wealth, about everything else. But it's all an act. Eventually, we leave this theater, we go back to where we come from. And then, if you have your own prarabdha, then you have more consequences to pay off. You come back and play the act again. Sankhya Yogi knows it's an act. So he sits in the balcony, gets involved where required, otherwise tries not to get involved so that he just goes to that final state.
So Krishna is a Sankhya yogi and Arjun is a Karma yogi, no?
Krishna is
Bhagwan.
Bhagwanji. He's not a Sankhya.
Chapter 11 is all about Krishna also. So,
Okay.
chapter 11, Krishna will reveal his true self on who he is as well. But
And Krishna and Arjun is us. He's the Karma Yogi.
Oh, both of them are Karma yogi.
yeah. And you know what? The Gita actually, what is also beautiful about the book, it's written like 3,500 years ago. The book actually does not ever tell Arjun that you are a Karma Yogi. The reason why the book is even talking about Sankhya Yogi is because the book constantly just tells you consequences and cause and effect. So he's talking about Sankhya Yogi more as a cause and effect to Arjun, so he's aware of it. But he will dive a lot deeper into Karma Yogi because that is what Arjun will find relatable. And that is what we find relatable. Because Arjun's journey in the book is our journey in life.
Hi, may I come in? I have a daily life related observation about myself. So I've been reading the Gita for the last few weeks. And yet, and this is pertaining to what Tuhina just mentioned, how a Sankhya Yogi is able to interact with everybody around them on a day-to-day basis and realize that who he is interacting with are all parts of the Supreme Being, the Self, and so on. And so naturally, any external stimulus doesn't perturb such a person. We're all karma yogis, and that doesn't really happen with us on a day-to-day basis. So when we go to office, when we go out into the real world, we are affected by people around us. Some we can get along with very easily, and others, it's how it is in the office. Sometimes you don't really get along well with everybody at the same level, and then it affects you. So on days that I'm able to get my 2 shloks in, I find that I'm able to deal with them better. And on days I'm not able to, I just revert to my usual self, only to realize when I'm going to bed that today I was just the regular me. And I was just reacting to every situation that came my way, responding to the things how I normally do, is being a regular karma yogi, basically, right? So if I've understood this correctly, the job of a karma yogi here is also to eventually try to be like the Sankhya yogi, to realize that that's what you've been saying, right? To realize that every one of us is here doing a job, but eventually we are all part of the Supreme Self. So hone your mind and your emotions and control them in such a way that you stop reacting to external stimulus every time, and keep your focus about and keep your goals so firmly before yourself that this external stimulus is not able to shake your focus, right? And so you go about every day with a sense of peace and equanimity is what you said one time, right? So have I understood this right? This is how you go about it, because every day of my life being a karma yogi, this will happen to me every day. I will get affected by all my external stimulus, and hopefully with practice, it'll just get better and I won't be so perturbed anymore.
Yeah. So I think so thank you for sharing the impact that Swadhyaya has on you. I do think as you keep practicing every day, you will build a mental resolve and strength to implement the principles where less and less things will affect you, right? But the fact that something still affects us proves that we are karma yogi. We're not Sankhya yogi, right? And it,
So there is a difference there. When you say that you are reacting to things, that is not being karma yogi. When we are only reacting, when we are not choosing our intellect to drive what our response should be, and we are just acting out of instincts, then we're not being karma yogi, we're being animals. Animals work based on instinct. Okay? That is not being a human, that is being an animal. Responding is the job of a karma yogi. So karma yogi doesn't mean that you have to become a Sankhya yogi. No, they are completely different disciplines culminating in the same end goal. Okay, you will have the same level of equanimity eventually as a karma yogi. But karma yogi means doing your actions with the right purpose, with the right bhav. And so when you're doing swadhyay, it allows you to take a pause, to think what or how you want to be in that situation, and then respond to that situation, respond to that person